G'day, my name's Ian from Fortem, Australia. Fortem is a national charity that looks after the mental health and wellbeing of first responders and their families, the people who protect and care for our communities. I'm with two of my colleagues from Fortem today, Felicity and Gen. Felicity and Gen are community engagement officers. Felicity's on the Gold Coast and Gen is out Yass Way. I'm in Canberra this morning. Thanks so much for your time, guys. And I don't know if you can hear it, but the New South Wales Premier's on the telly in the background giving her COVID update for the day. Oh, gosh. How are you guys going in amongst these strange times? Felicity, you've just come out of lockdown on the Gold Coast.
Yes. Yeah, we're one of the lucky few at the moment. We were joking with the team the other day that the Gold Coast and West Gippsland are the two offices that aren't in lockdown at the moment. So it's going really well. We did have to cancel a couple activities during the lockdown, but we were able to also make some of them virtual. So I think given the timeline of the pandemic, we've been able to adapt and we've learnt new technologies, and everyone's really happy to adapt to these new circumstances and sort of take everything with a grain of salt. I don't know if it's the same for you, Jen, but all of my participants were just really thankful for anything we could offer them during that time.
Yeah.
How are you and your community going, Jen? You live in rural New South Wales. How are you going with lockdown?
Look, it's not actually too bad for me, to be perfectly honest, Ian, because where I live, like you said, I am quite rural. So I'm like out of town even, so further past town. So I really am kind of surrounded by, I have a 10-acre farm and I'm sort of surrounded by farms around me. So there's not a lot of, people, or I'm not in like a little house or anything like that. So I can actually get out and do things, and most of my spare time, lockdown or otherwise, I spend doing things on my farm anyway. So it hasn't affected me too much in terms of, my day-to-day life, really, to be honest.
Felicity, when somebody asks you, so what do you do at Fortem? What's your job? What is a community engagement coordinator? How do you describe your role at Fortem? What do you guys do?
The best job in the world, honestly. And that I've had so many people, like, while we were at activities and things like that, they're going, are you really getting paid to do this? And I'm still pinching myself, the fact that, I get to wake up, I get to help a community that I'm really passionate about helping, get to hang out with some people who are just have the coolest stories, get to, hang out with their families and actually do something to help them at the same time as going on a dolphin kayaking tour to Byron Bay and going paintballing and doing an art class. And it really does just tick all of those boxes that I was looking for in a job. And, my main role is to support the participants and to put on the activities. So getting to plan some really fun activities that I know that my cohort would really enjoy, and then getting to follow through with that and just watching everyone have a really great time and take a break from their lives, if it's stressful or not. They're just having a great time and making sure that people have fun in their life. That's basically what I would say our position description is, which is awesome.
Jen, tell us about some of the activities that you organise for your part of the Canberra region, sort of around Yass and Canberra. What are some of the activities that you organise, and give us a sense of the benefit that comes from those activities when it comes to the mental fitness and the mental well-being of first responders and their families? How does this work?
So I guess kind of touching on what Felicity was saying, I guess. So basically all of the activities run lots of different various things depending on people's interests and availability of service providers and lots of different factors. But really what it comes down to is that we're socially connecting people. We're bringing people together. And I think that the foundation of all of our activities really does sort of fall back to that. And I think it's really probably my favourite part of the job is being able to see the meaningful impact that these developing friendships actually have on people. And I think, like, just to sort of give you a bit of a quote that I had recently out of one of my feedback surveys was that we did a barbecue cooking class in Yass. And one of my favourite quotes that came out of that was that the person who had attended had connected with the other partners of the first responder agency that she was a part of, and they'd actually organised to catch up afterwards and have another barbecue. So they're going to use the skills that they learned in that activity to come back together and socialise again. And it's just a really beautiful feeling, I think.
Solid gold. So you guys make those connections, but the real magic happens when those connections go beyond Fortem
100%.
and be embedded in people's life day to day and their weekly routine. That's great feedback.
That example that Jen just said is like the ideal outcome for what we're trying to do. Like, it's great, and we can put on activities once or twice a month or however many times that we're doing them. But if people are able to, you know, take that relationship and take those skills into their life and reap the benefits ongoing, that's really what we're trying to do, as much as shoot each other during paintball, you know.
You guys both
shooting each other during paintball. That is pretty fun.
That is pretty fun.
You guys both come to this work with lived experience. You guys both come from a first responder family or are a part of a first responder family. Felicity, give us a sense of your connection with the first responder community that comes from your family.
Yeah. So my stepdad and my brother are both members of the Queensland Police. My stepdad came into my life when I was 14, so I was quite new to the first responder space, and I thought it was the coolest thing in the world that, you know, my stepdad was a police officer, and I had about 20 questions for him, including, you know, how many times have you shot someone and blah, blah. And I just had this very skewed idea of what being a police officer actually was. And he was able to introduce me to what it meant to be a part of the Blue family and how special that connection was already and how much they supported each other. And then my brother went into the police force, and I don't know, but being able to find a job that provides me with the luxury of actually being able to help and actually being able to provide solutions to, you know, you can see it when they've had a hard day at work, and, you know, a hard day at work for them is very different to what a hard day at work would be for me. So being able to provide a solution, not many first responder family members have that luxury, but being able to say, hey, I've actually got an activity coming up this weekend. I know this resource that you can access, and being educated in that space is so awesome. But having that lived experience of being the first responder family member, I can really relate to a lot of the participants as well. And that I hope they find that quite comforting in the fact that when they're telling me their stories, it's not falling on deaf ears, and I can relate to everything that they've sort of gone through.
Jen, tell us about your connection with the first responder community.
To be honest with you, the biggest part of my connection to the first responder community came from this job more so than through my partner. My partner is not a super social person, so we didn't really go out and socialise with our first responder community until I got this job. And now we both do. So I think it's actually had a really good positive impact on both of us. I think with regards to the passion for what we do, I think that for me anyway, every activity that I do, everything that I coordinate, when I think about what I'm doing it for, it's almost like an extension of my own family. So when you've got you've got a first responder partner, and you're thinking, like, what would you want someone to do for your partner to help support them if they were experiencing distress or trauma, or even just if they just needed a break? Like, what would you want somebody to put that, how would you want someone to convey that effort? And I think about that with everything I do. I think about, like, the best possible scenario for the people who I would almost consider an extension of my family.
Felicity, help us understand the role of a first responder family in supporting their first responder, and perhaps the impact that can have on the partner of the first responder, the children of the first responder, because there is sort of secondary trauma, a secondary impact that can ripple through a family. Help us understand that.
Absolutely. Well, I think before I came into this job and before I was educated in this space, I just assumed, you know, sometimes they came home from work and they were grumpy and tired and, you know, not really fully understanding exactly what they might have seen that day and how much of an effect that can actually have. But I think being the first responder family is, Jen, you can probably relate to this, is, you know, providing them some reprieve from their stressful job, and, you know, providing them a safe place to talk if they do want to, providing them with, just a welcome distraction in their life, I think, and being able to really separate their work life from their home life is super important to me and my family as well. But in terms of the secondary trauma, I think, yeah, absolutely. Especially if someone is going through some mental health issues, it can really take a ripple effect on the family, because the family just wants to help at the end of the day. And sometimes they're not the right people to help. And sometimes that takes a fair bit to accept and to realize what the referral pathways might be or what the next step might be. And that, that sometimes they can't fix everything. But yeah, I've definitely seen my family go through some stuff because of the first responder roles. And I think, yeah, this, in terms of the secondary trauma, it's not black and white. Yes, no, you're going through secondary trauma. It's not because they're telling you stories. It can sometimes just be because of what they've seen that day, and that they don't want to talk about it, and they don't want to talk that afternoon. So it's a very grey area of being able to realize how, when, who to help at what time. I think that that's probably the most important thing that I've taken from being with Fortem.
Jen, one of the things that I'm really proud of is that Fortem has raised the awareness within the wider community of that secondary trauma of families, and the supportive role that families do play in looking after their first responder. And the upcoming Fortem Beyond Duty Virtual Summit on the 2nd of September has a real focus on families and the need to support families in their work and with the trauma that they carry. Do you see I guess that happening in your community, that there is that first responder families do need greater recognition for the role that they play and the trauma that they carry? Is that something you see?
Yeah, absolutely. I've only recently, in the last few months, really started reaching out to the YAS community, because I also do a bit of support in Canberra as well. But since I did start reaching out to the YAS community, I was surprised at how many of the partners, especially of first responders, said things to me like, "Oh, that's so great that you support us too," because sometimes people don't realise that what we go through at the same time. And it's not just things like, obviously secondary trauma is a major thing, but people sometimes forget the little things that go with being with a first responder, especially one that's in shift work. Like, we have to move Christmas. Yep. We have to have Christmas at a different time of year. And that's not something that's, like secondary trauma, but it is an adjustment that you have to make, and it's a change. And there's a lot of little things, I think, that partners and families sacrifice and do to support that often goes unnoticed. And I think it's great that, we actually put so much focus on that support, Ian, with families.
Absolutely.
The Fortem Australia website is a great resource for families. It's got all those downloadable tools in the resource library. There's all the videos that you can watch as part of the Peak Fortem library as well. And one of the most popular pages on our website are the Wellbeing activities that you guys really drive and that you're a part of. And that full calendar of virtual and face-to-face events are on the Fortem Australia website. But Felicity, here's a chance for you to plug an upcoming activity. What have you got coming up that you want to let people know about?
Okay. Oh, well, one that I'm really, really excited about is we've got a parents and children's art class coming up during the next school holidays. So just at the end of September. And that art class, the facilitator who's doing that uses art to do mindfulness exercises. So it's going to be the parents creating a canvas with their children to focus on, how they might be feeling at the moment, what negative thoughts they have, what positive thoughts they might bring out of that. So it's really, like Jen was explaining before, when we're doing our activities, we're trying to make them fun, which they always are, but also make sure that they're reaping the benefits ongoing, in that they're based on the Royal Melbourne Hospital's 5 Ways to Wellbeing. So this one, for example, is ticking off being mindful and connecting and keep learning. So those 3 aspects of mindfulness, they're going to take them back into their lives, and during the school holidays, which can sometimes be a stressful time for parents. So that's my plug. Absolutely.
How about you, Jen? Lockdown has forced you to pivot. What are some of the activities you've got coming up that you'd like to point people to?
That being said, Ian, we are in lockdown at the moment, but one thing that I'm really quite passionate about with my job, being a person who does live rurally, is that we offer virtual activities. And I run 3 virtual activities a month at the moment, which are a cooking class, an art class, and a trivia. And we actually don't just support people in cities and regional areas. We actually have been able to previously support people who have been deployed overseas, and they actually connect in with their families during our virtual activities, which for me, it's just it's amazing. It's amazing that we can do that, and that they can cook a meal, even if it's virtually, with their family on the other side of the world who might be away working for their first responder role. And so I just probably like to reiterate that those activities are still running. We try to keep them short and sweet. Our cooking class is just an hour out of your night, and then you get to sit down and eat what you've cooked. Our art class is an hour and a half. And it's all stuff like sketching and drawing, where, it's just all you need is pencils and paper. Really, you don't need much to participate.
All these activities are free and available to eligible first responder families, and Fortem is funded by the federal government to provide these services to first responder families. And I'd encourage anyone to head to the Fortem Australia website. I'll include a link with this video and check out some of those activities in a community near you. Fortem is operating right along Australia's east coast, from Brisbane right down to Melbourne at the moment. We have big plans to go national and really help first responder communities right across Australia. Felicity and Gen, you guys are in the engine room of Fortem Australia. I'm so proud to work with you and support what you guys do. Thank you so much for your time today. Take care and stay safe, and thanks for what you do.
Thanks, Ian.